The Calgary Police Service is releasing our statistics on domestic conflicts today to draw attention to the fact that domestic conflict and domestic violence in our city is on a rise. Last year, we received almost 19,000 domestic conflict calls for service, which is 10% more calls than average. The vast majority of these did not involve physical violence. However, approximately 3,282 of these calls did, which is a 24% increase over the 5-year average. Indications from the first quarter of this year show that 2016 is not likely to be any better. We have already had approximately 40% more domestic violence calls in the first 3 months of this year than is average. Domestic violence is a very real problem in our community, and it crosses all neighborhoods, age groups, ethnicities, religion, and economic statuses. Through our analysis, we also know that there is a correlation between increased unemployment and increased domestic violence. We believe this could be because people who are already prone to violence are home more and are facing significant stressors. I do want to stress that unemployment is not a cause of domestic violence, but it is one of many stressors. Issues around power and control, addictions, anger, pre-exposure to violence, life skills, housing, and other factors can be exacerbated by unemployment. In all likelihood, this connection with unemployment partly explains the rise in domestic violence. However, in no way does it excuse it. We work very hard as a police service to prevent domestic conflicts from escalating to violence. But because of this, often such a private problem, we cannot solve it. We cannot solve it without the community getting involved and families in crisis reaching out for help. With that in mind, we are encouraging anyone that is experiencing abuse or violence in an intimate relationship to reach out for help. There are countless agencies ready to offer support that can be contacted 24 hours a day by phone. Victims of domestic violence can also contact the Calgary Police Service anytime by calling the non-emergency line at 403-266-1234 or 911 if they're in immediate danger. Another way that we are working to address this issue is through one of our programs, the Domestic Conflict Response Team. This is a formal partnership with our integrated partner Homefront. Through this partnership, police officers are paired with domestic violence case managers to help families in crisis. I would now like to invite Maggie McKillop, the Executive Director from Homefront, to share a few words.
Good afternoon. I'm Maggie McKillop, M-A-G-G-I-E, M-A-C, capital K-I-L-L-O-P, and I'm the Executive Director of Homefront. Homefront is a nonprofit agency working to support families impacted by domestic violence here in Calgary through a unique and coordinated and collaborative model. Homefront works alongside a number of partners that include the Calgary Police Service, Justice, Child and Family Services, and a number of community agencies. Homefront receives all its referrals through the Calgary Police Service, and through our 2 programs, we support families to break their cycle of abuse. Homefront's Domestic Conflict Response Team, DCRT, is an integrated response to repeat calls of domestic conflict where no charges have been laid. Currently, there are 8 specialized DCRT teams covering each of the police districts. These specialized teams are made up of a police officer and a Homefront case manager. Together, they support families identified to provide risk assessment, safety planning, and assist in connecting them to community resources. Homefront's Domestic Violence Intervention and Resource Team works with victims on all charged domestic violence files that come through the Calgary Police Service. Case managers provide comprehensive intervention, resources, advocacy, support to victims as they move through the justice system. Domestic violence is about power and control. There are many factors that indicate a relationship may be unhealthy. Some of these include isolation from family and friends, jealousy, name-calling, put-downs, insults, coercion, unwanted or excessive communication, any type of action that causes physical and/or emotional harm. Domestic violence can look very different within different relationships. Healthy relationships should be based on equality, respect, open communication, and boundaries. If you're feeling uncertain or afraid, as though something isn't right in your relationship, we encourage you to reach out for support, because it is available, before things escalate. If you're concerned that a family member, a friend, or coworker may be in an unhealthy relationship, it's important to have the courage to ask them if they're all right, if there's anything that you can do for them. The most important thing to do is to listen and to not be judgmental, to let them know that there is support out there and respect whatever decision they make. Let them know that abuse is not their fault, and ensure that they have the information to access any supports. As always, if they're in immediate danger, to call 911. Domestic violence is rarely an isolated incident. We want to encourage those faced with domestic violence to contact the police before it escalates. As mentioned earlier, Homefront has 2 programs that are uniquely situated to support individuals who have been in contact with the Calgary Police Service and have been referred to Homefront. Homefront supports over 5,000 individuals a year who have been impacted by domestic violence. Finally, there are a number of community agencies and organizations available in Calgary that are prepared and ready to answer your questions and provide support. A list of Calgary-based domestic violence resources can be found on our website at homefrontcalgary.com, and Connect and Family Sexual Abuse Network is available 24 hours, 7 days a week at 403-234-7233. Thank you.
Questions?
Are you able to speak to convictions as a result of domestic abuse? How they are
in what manner do you mean?
Well, calls come in, serious abuse, convictions, warnings. How does that work in the domestic violence
So,
scale of things?
yeah, so, yeah, for sure. So for the Calgary Police Service, all calls for service that are domestic in nature are dispatched. And so police officer will go out whether or not they believe violence has occurred. All domestics police officers will attend. When they're there, they'll conduct the investigation, and if they determine that there is violence, it is our policy in our organization that we will lay charges for those. We're very fortunate in Calgary where they have a specialized domestic violence court. So as soon as charges are laid, our integrated partner Homefront is immediately involved in that case file to provide support. We have specialized Crown prosecutors in the domestic court. The police, Homefront, probation, Crown are all embedded into that court process. What we have been seeing through the success of those partners working together is that we are having resolution. About 75% of all of our matters are resolved before they go to trial. The vast majority of our violence that we are seeing, we're trying to balance between, are we trying to protect the family, or is this a family that is going to come together over time? They have children, it's unhealthy now. What are we trying to do with this family, and where are we trying to get them to? The vast majority of the cases that we see is trying to make a happier, healthier family. How do we do that over time? And so we are seeing resolution, about 75% pre-trial that are resolved. And the goal of that in our system and the people there is trying to make these families happier and healthier. Certainly there's a portion which are much more serious offenses, and then our goal at that point is protecting the family.
I'll try to word this as best I can. It is obviously not great that the numbers are up 10% under the average from last year, but as a police, on the police side of things, is it positive that you are getting more calls, so it's less living in fear and more, this is what's happening, please help us?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a challenge when we look at numbers and data and we try and figure out where is this coming from. We do know that when we look at national averages of reporting, domestic violence is significantly underreported. The vast majority of cases are not reported. We do know through our analytical unit and the work they've done that we are seeing higher than average rates of reporting. This is a good thing, that people are having confidence in the system to make the report. The reason for the number, we do certainly are seeing the correlation between unemployment rates and domestic violence rates. We do believe that this is not just an increase in reporting and confidence, although that is part of it. Unfortunately, where we are right now, we're just seeing also increased rates of violence.
So is it not expected that to be an anomaly this year with numbers so high, the unemployment rate continues to go up, the economy continues to go down? Is it, the fear is the assumption this will continue?
The work that we have done, this isn't a surprise for us in the service and the work that is being done, where we see the correlation, and I believe one of the graphs was shared earlier. When we go back, to previous years where unemployment was high, we saw high rates of domestic violence. This is not static. We are not living in a city where this is our new reality and it's going to be here all the time. We will expect that our rates are going to decrease in time. So where we're at right now, we're shifting, adjusting resources. We're certainly handling higher rates now, but this is not how we're going to be sustainable moving forward.
You already touched on this, but can you again kind of explain the causal link between unemployment and more cases of domestic violence?
So one of the challenges for us is figuring out what's happening in a family. When we identify a family that's a potential for violence, we know a call has occurred. And as an example, when our integrated partners, the police officer and the domestic violence case manager walk through that door, they don't know necessarily what they're going to get when they walk in. One of the data points that we do have is we know the correlation between unemployment and increased domestic violence rates. But again, it's not the cause of it, it's just an additional stressor that goes along with power and control, pre-exposure to violence, addictions, mental health, all those other things that are happening. And so it's just an added stressor.
Yes.
The data that we do not have.
I shouldn't have said cause. I don't mean causal link. I just mean what is the correlation between that? What's actually going on in terms of the individual who's experiencing, the job loss, or the family that's experiencing the job loss? What's actually going on with those people that might lead to an increase in the rates?
And it's very challenging to just make a broad statement. What we're very fortunate of in Calgary is that each report of a domestic conflict is risk assessed. So we have specialized risk assessment team, full-time risk assessors, and their job is to look at that family and try and figure out what's happening. What is happening with that family, and what would be the right resource for that family. And so it's very complex to suggest it's just one issue or another. That's not what we see when our officers walk through the door trying to say, okay, what's the underlying root cause of this? It tends to be very challenging. We see overlap, unemployment with life skills, with mental health, with addictions. It becomes very challenging to nail it down to one cause.
Can I ask, so since you know this, just a couple of things. One, you touched on the fact that you're sort of reallocating resources. What are you doing knowing that we're facing another bad year in unemployment-wise? How can you address that?
It is challenging in the sense when you look at these are external factors that it's not easy, it's not possible for us to walk out and say we're going to change unemployment rates. So we're going to have to react to our reality as to what we have. So prioritizing those that are at the most risk for violence, ensuring that we have the strong partnerships in place, make sure we're making the connections and referring programs out that we can. And there is a reality, our officers, as are all the other agencies working in the sector, are carrying increased workload and working harder. But we know that this is not how we're going to be sustaining business a long time. We're just in a tough period now.
Also, one more thing. So again, knowing that that's a trigger, how do you stop that? Like you said you can't stop unemployment, so do you just sort of deal with the reality of the economics we've dealt with?
Yeah, it's an external factor for us that we cannot control. It's beyond our mechanism. So the question then becomes down to is what's happening in that family. So if we can't control employment, can we help with addictions? Can we help with mental health? Can we help with life skills? Can we help with other things? Is there other factors that we can help reduce stressors in those areas? And hopefully we're going to reduce the risk for violence through that.
Right, getting the people to reach out before it gets to that level.
Absolutely.
Sorry, this is already addressed, but does this mean you're going to be allocating more officers to the domestic conflict unit, or would that be considered?
No, I think the reality for us, and we're not the only area in the service that's feeling stressors. We have lots of increased rates that are going on right now. We have 40 members in the Calgary Police Service under the Domestic Conflict Unit, certainly the largest that I'm aware of in the country, and we have a very robust process for assessing risk, and then depending on where you land within the spectrum of seriousness or potential for violence, different teams will respond to that. And so we are working with increased file load, but manageable with the teams that we have.
Also, you mentioned the level of violence. That's kind of a concern as well, not just the calls. So does that give you a sense of the stress that's out there, or why it would be higher increase?
It is. We're certainly seeing, I think when we look at all our personal lives and we think about finances and the thought of being unemployed, that's a significant stressor for people who don't have any other stresses going on. So we are seeing a significant increase in our serious assault with weapons. But one thing I do want to point out, though, is that the number that we're dealing with is very low. And so we're seeing a 70% increase in assault with weapons. That is concerning. Those are alarming. Those are people attached to each one of those incidents. But we're dealing with a small volume, which is showing that percentage increase.